Hello everyone! In this week's video, I'm going to be creating some character design reference sheets and designing some characters. I've been working on writing the story for Pariah and her world. As I was writing, I quickly learned I wanted Alfred to have some friends. And like I often say, I have an easier time writing characters when I know what they look like. They go from being a fuzzy blob in my brain to a distinct character. So I'm going to be designing 2 friends for Alfred today. And I also want them to be unique in their own ways. As many of you know, I've been trying to push myself to draw more unique characters by including things like different facial features, body types, and so on. As I've been learning more about these things, I am also learning it's a lot to keep track of and remember. So today I'll be creating a visual library in my chibi elf style for myself to reference to. But also to help me keep track of things I've learned, I made this super helpful character design board in Milanote. Milanote is the sponsor of this video. Milanote is a tool for organizing your creative projects. It's perfect for artists and designers like myself because it allows me to organize my ideas visually in a way that makes sense to me. I love that I can drag pictures around, resize them, and group them into whatever way I want. And importing pictures is super easy with the Milanote web clipper extension. It makes collecting inspiration super quick and easy. I can also add notes and even draw directly in Milanote to quickly get my ideas down. This makes doing quick drafts of character ideas easier since I'm able to get ideas down while having my inspiration around me. Oh, I also love that I can add in color swatches. This is great for when designing characters. I've also been using Milanote to help me plan out my current story project that I mentioned earlier, and it has been so helpful. I have to blur the text since I can't reveal my project yet, but I love being able to visually lay out the plot points of my story. It makes planning things out a lot easier for me since it's more visual. I also made character bios to help me remember important details about my characters. These were super easy to make since I used the pre-made character profile template as inspiration. There are over 100 built-in templates that cover a wide range of categories like illustration, game design, writing, productivity, and so many more. No matter what kind of project you're working on, you can jumpstart your creation process. Milanote is available for free with no time limit, so sign up for a free Milanote account using the link in the description. Thank you so much to Milanote for sponsoring this video. We will come back to my Milanote design board later. For now, let's jump into drawing. When I was doing research, kind of the main body shapes I found were hourglass, square, triangle, upside down triangle, rectangle, and circle. I'm sure there are more, but these were the main ones that I was seeing and that I wanted to focus on. I start by measuring out a chart for how I want to proportion the bodies. Most of them are going to be 6 heads tall, except for the last 2. For this chart, I want to focus more on the body shapes while having the bodies also be the same height. This will help me more easily see the differences in their shapes. I'm going to have this first set be more feminine in shape, and then I will make a second set that is more masculine. This first shape is the hourglass one. This one is simple because it's kind of the default shape that I go to most of the time. The waist is defined and the hips and upper torso are about the same width. Now it was time for the second body type, and it is square. When drawing the bodies, I'll copy over the head and also a more transparent version of the hourglass body so that I have something to refer to for the proportions. For all of these, I'm going to keep the head the same since I'm not focusing on the head at this time. For the square body type, I try to keep everything a bit more square in shape. The waist doesn't go in very much, and I also keep the wrists and ankles a bit wider to help with the boxier feel. Third is the triangle body type. The rib cage and shoulder area is going to be more narrow, and the hips are going to be wider. This is a kind of shape I most often use for my chibi characters, so it was interesting using it for a character with slightly more normal proportions. But of course they are still very stylized. For this body type, I also drew the legs a bit curvier to help the lower body feel like it has more weight to it. Next was the upside down triangle. Instead of the shoulders being more narrow than the hips, they are going to be wider than the hips. This time I give a bit more mass to the arms to help the upper half feel more hefty. I do want to mention that for these, I'm not pushing the proportions to the extreme. I'm keeping them a little bit more in the zone where I feel like I would draw them naturally. I don't want to push the proportions just for the sake of the chart, and I don't want to push them to the point that I feel like it's out of the style that I'm drawing in. That being said, when I design characters, I may choose to push the proportions more or less, depending on the design. The chart is kind of just a default level, if that makes sense. Anyways, we're on to the rectangle shape. Like I said, I want to keep the bodies all about the same height, but for this body type, I always saw it drawn taller than the rest, so I drew it a bit taller. To help the body type feel even longer, I made the torso a bit shorter than usual and the limbs a bit longer than usual. Lastly was the circle body type. Like with the rectangle one, I often saw this body type drawn shorter. To help it feel shorter, I kind of did the opposite of what I did with the rectangle proportions. Instead of making the torso shorter and the limbs longer, I made the torso longer and the limbs shorter. Okay, so here are the 6 body types with a more feminine shape. Next, I wanted to do the same thing, but make the body types a bit more on the masculine side. As you can see, I copy my previous drawings to refer to, but I do get rid of them in a bit. I decided to draw these body types a bit longer, since my male characters often have slightly longer proportions than my female characters. To help the body types feel more on the masculine side, I keep the shapes a little bit more sharp. I also don't have the ankles and wrists narrow as much. I also don't draw breasts, but will slightly indicate one of the pec muscles with a line. I don't have a ton to say for these since I'm kind of just doing the same thing again, just slightly different. Plus, for a lot of these, I ended up just adjusting them with the liquify tool because I was starting to get tired of doing this. I'm sure this will be helpful for future me, but for the current me, it's very tedious to make. And you might be thinking, well, Becca, you made that visual library in Milanote. You can just use that, can't you? And yes, I know I do have that, and I totally will use that. But I also want references for the different details in my chibi elf style to help me better understand and visualize these details. Anyways, I resized things and moved things around so I could make some secondary notes for myself. Something I want to make sure to keep in mind is that the torso can be different lengths for all of the body types. I also wanted a reminder that all these different body shapes can be drawn with different amounts of body fat, so I took the hourglass shape and drew it with different weight amounts. Okay, so here is my chart. A part of me also wanted to include the different body types in side view, but I think I need to save that for a different time. For now, let's keep moving. Next, I want a chart for different face shapes. I'm starting by drawing the kind of default shape I usually draw. I think I would consider this an oval face shape, I guess. I'm going to be honest, I always have a hard time putting people's faces into the different face shapes, so sorry if some of these are kind of off. For the second face, it's going to be more square, so I make the lines of the side more vertical instead of diagonal, and pull out the jawline to make it more square. I will also be drawing the hairline different for the face shapes to kind of help push the shape a bit more. So for this one, I made the hairline more boxy. Third is diamond. I kind of struggled with this one, but I'm going to make the top and bottom of the head longer and more narrow, while having the middle part of the head be a bit wider. This one was really easy. It is the round face shape, and I simply just made the head very round. Now this one confused me a bit. It is the oblong face shape. And when I was looking at people with this face shape, it seems like they can have different face shapes, but overall the face is longer in appearance. It almost seems like a subsection, like an oval face but longer, a square face but longer. So yeah, something kind of like that, but I'm not totally sure. Next is heart. I made the top a bit wider and the jaw a bit more short and pointy. I also gave a widow's peak hairline. Last is triangular. For this one, the forehead seems to be smaller and narrower, while the jaw area is wider. And so here is my face chart. Next was noses, and we're going to kind of speed through them because I feel like from an outsider's perspective, my nose chart may not make much sense. I'm going to be drawing 6 types of noses: Greek, Hawk, Nubian, Roman, snub, and turned up. I drew each of these 6 nose types in side view, 3/4 view, and front view, while also having them kind of be in my chibi elf style. However, because the noses aren't being placed on faces, I feel like the lines and shapes I used for them feel a bit nonsensical. So yeah, but I feel like they would make sense if they were placed on faces. Alongside all of these noses, I wrote notes for myself, like length and width can vary for all of the nose types. So yeah, that's my little nose chart. I feel like I need to include some of my more simple noses in this, but this is a good start. Lastly, I'm going to make an eye chart for different eye shapes. I made a light gray oval to represent the iris so that it's easier for me to draw the eye shapes in a consistent way. Honestly, I was hoping to also make an ear chart and a wing chart. However, for some reason, I've been having a lot of arm pain and drawing was making it more irritated. I've been trying to work out more recently and I think I've made my arm annoyed with me because of that. The workout I've been doing has a lot of yoga moves in it that require you to use your wrists and arms a decent amount. And I think my drawing arm doesn't like that very much. Plus, I think I somehow keep sleeping on it funny because it keeps kind of hurting when I wake up. So yeah, I decided to not push it and did the eyes as my last example chart for now. I drew 7 different eye shapes: round, monolid, upturned, downturned, almond, hooded, and square. I never really saw square listed for eye shapes, so this is a more stylized shape that I often draw. I felt like I needed to include it since it's the shape that I use for Silva. For my extra notes, I noted on eyelash amount, eyelash color, as well as iris details. Things like the highlight and color amount can vary. The last iris option feels very different from the rest. Once again, this is how I often draw Silva's eyes, and it's probably how I will draw other characters with lighter eye colors. But a lot of other characters will get more of the other iris style. So yeah, here's my eye chart. And now that we have all the different charts, let's design some characters with help from my references. I'm currently bringing all of my references that I made into Milanote. I kind of just drag them around and place them in their different categories. So like I said, I wanted to design 2 friends for Alfred. For the first one, I want him to be a very friendly person that looks like he gives good hugs. So I'm going to use very round and friendly shapes for his design. He grows daffodil flowers, so I want his color scheme to feature a lot of yellow. Also, his name is going to be Dylan. Get it? Because daffodil, Dylan. Okay, let's keep going. For the second character, I want him to kind of contrast with Dylan's personality and appearance. He's going to seem more cold and his design will have sharper shapes. This character grows blue star flowers and his name is Amson. Since the scientific name for blue star flowers is Amsonia tabernamontana. Sorry if I said that wrong. But yeah, I shortened it to Amson. So I'm going to start by sketching out Dylan. I have Alfred right here to use for scale. He's going to be the shortest in the friend group because I want him to be the short sassy one. But his friends are just tall. Alfred isn't super short or anything. He's pretty average in height. For Dylan, I started to draw him with a more boxy shape, but that wasn't giving the friendly vibe to me. So I decided to go with a more pear body shape, having the upper body be more narrow and the lower body be more wide. And I felt like this gave the vibe that I wanted much more. Oh, also I forgot to mention, if you want to learn more about Alfred, you can watch this video. This is the video where I reworked my old character Alfred into this fairy story. So yeah, you can check out this video if you want to learn more about him. Next, I sketch out Amson's body shape. He's going to be more long and narrow. Also, I was surprised when I googled Amson and found out it was a real name. I thought I chose something that wasn't really a real name, but I wanted to go with it because I felt like it fit. In my head, this character is kind of emo, and Amson just kind of sounds emo to me. I think it's because Amson sounds like Ansem from Kingdom Hearts, so it just kind of gives emo vibes. Anyways, now I'm sketching out the details for Dylan. Like I said, I want to use very round shapes, so his eyes are more oval in shape, his nose is round, and I'm giving him a very simple and kind of round hairstyle. For his clothes, he's going to be wearing a plaid button-up with suspenders. I added the suspenders to kind of jazz up the outfit. Plus, I felt like they would fit his vibe and make him seem kind of friendly. A lot of the clothes that the fairies wear are kind of based on more old-style fashion, or fashion that you most often kind of see in fantasy settings. For Ansem, I was struggling a lot. I didn't totally know what I wanted to do with his hair. I wanted a hairstyle that kind of emphasized the diamond shape of his face, so I wanted it to have a middle part. I ended up going with this hairstyle that's parted in the middle, and he also kind of has a mullet in the back. For his clothes, I was also struggling a bit. I wanted him to wear a turtleneck, but that's about all I knew. I kind of just kept playing around with things until it felt okay, but I wasn't totally happy until I added the vest. The vest really brought things together. Next, I quickly added in the colors for Dylan. I drew a bunch of lines to make the kind of plaid detail on his shirt. I do make his pants brown at first, but I'm going to change them to be green later. I like to try to use green in the fairies' clothes, since it often helps them feel a bit more fairy-like. Also, I was happy with my first sketch of Dylan, but Ansem was for some reason looking like a me character, and I did not like that. So I went over my sketch again to hopefully help him feel less me-like. He looked like he was ready to play some tennis in Wii Sports or something. I think it's because he has kind of a bigger head and kind of a really skinny body, and the way I drew his face, it just really looked like a me. Anyways, now I could add his colors. Blue starflowers are often a lighter blue, so I made his hair the same color. But to help him have that more moody feel, I use a lot of darker colors in his clothing. And with that, the friend group is now done. But I do want to take a bit of time to draw these characters interacting. I always like to do pages like this after designing characters to help me better get to know them and their designs. This first sketch is based off of a Draw Your Squad meme, and it seemed to fit the dynamic of this group. We have Alfred being over the top, Dylan is concerned, and Amson doesn't really care. I actually had a ton of fun sketching this one out, especially Alfred. I love the pose and how dramatic he's being. The second drawing is going to be a more simple sketch of Dylan and Amson, just to kind of show the contrast in their personalities. Another reason I like doing these sketch pages is because it allows me to get a better idea of how I more naturally draw the characters. When making character sheets, I feel like the drawings are stiffer and they're not really shorthanded at all. However, for pages like this, it allows me to be more natural and also shorthand things a little bit. Or it helps me get a better idea of how I would shorthand the characters. And if you don't know, shorthand kind of just means like you draw the character a bit more quickly and maybe a bit less detailed, but it still looks like the character. But lastly is a little chibi drawing based off of this image I saw on Pinterest. I can imagine Dylan has the habit of picking people up. It's kind of interesting designing other townspeople that'll be living in the same town as Pariah. In my head, the townspeople are kind of just a mass of people that don't like Pariah. But when I was designing Dylan and Amson, I was trying to think of what their opinion on Pariah would be. I think Dylan would possibly fear Pariah, or the idea of her anyways, because he's never really actually met her. And a lot of the townspeople haven't really actually met her. But based on the rumors that people spread, he thinks she is some horrible plague. On the other hand, I could see Amson being more curious about her. Like, a part of him finds her interesting, but his aloofness also makes him not care enough to actually try to figure things out about her. Also, you might be thinking, but Becca, if these two are friends with Alfred and Alfred is kind of like Pariah's brother, why wouldn't they have met Pariah? And it's a whole kind of complicated thing. I mean, kind of. Long story short, Papa Eugene just kind of shelters Pariah a lot, so she's not actually out in the town very much. She's just kind of a rumor around the town, if that makes any sense. And Alfred being Alfred doesn't really help with these rumors. He kind of encourages them since he doesn't like Pariah very much. So yeah. Also, a bit of a random thing that's been bothering me at the back of my brain is that my fairy people are kind of more just like small people instead of being the kind of more standard fantasy fairies, you know, like Tinkerbell and stuff. But then I thought, well, maybe that's what the fairies of previous generations looked like. They had clothes made more out of pure flowers and lived in very natural homes. But as years have passed and things have progressed, they can now live in more man-made sort of environments and are able to make clothes that aren't just flower petals and leaves. So yeah. I want to make sure I still lean into the fairy and fantasy element, but kind of in my own way. I'm having a lot of fun playing around with the different characteristics when designing characters. And I hope this video and seeing me make the reference sheets also helped you in some way. Like I said, I want to make a few more reference sheets, like for different kinds of ears as well as wings. I'll have to do that sometime in the near future. For now, here is all the art and sketches I did in this video. I'm glad I finally got to do this, as it's been something I've been wanting to do for a while now, and using Milanote to build this reference sheet will be a great help. Before we end, I want to thank my super awesome YouTube members and Patreon patrons for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!